right, we are back on Young Turks. There's new evidence in the case of George Zimmerman. Of course, he was arrested recently for shooting Trayvon Martin, who was a 17-year-old. He said he had feared for his life and that he was acting in self-defense. He was arrested 6 weeks after the initial confrontation, of course. And now the FBI is considering charging him with a hate crime. Now, that's very important because then he could face the death penalty. Now, meanwhile, there's new evidence in the case that ABC News has uncovered. Now, some of this comes from the family physician for George Zimmerman. So understand that as you're hearing this part of the ABC report.
A medical report obtained exclusively by ABC News shows the morning after the shooting, Zimmerman was injured when he went to see his doctor. He had a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and cuts on the back of his head. Those cuts, seen in this photo taken the night of the shooting, also obtained exclusively by ABC News. At the same time, Zimmerman's doctor notes those cuts didn't require stitches, and Zimmerman did not have a concussion.
There's no question these documented injuries help Zimmerman's case. But the fundamental legal question remains, who was the aggressor?
One of the questions you have to ask yourself is, do you believe the family physician of Zimmerman, or do you believe your own eyes? Does it look like he has a broken nose and black eyes there? Once again, I can't see it. And those, yes, you saw the blood on his head. Lacerations, does not require stitches. Zimmerman himself said, I don't need to go to the hospital, and he went to the station an hour after the incident and would not go to the hospital. All right, now, there are other questions being asked in this case. ABC addresses that as well.
Questions remain. Zimmerman declined to go to the hospital the night of the shooting, and video of him in the Sanford police station less than an hour after the shooting shows no visible evidence of blood on his shirt and jacket. And he seems steady on his feet. We asked emergency physician Vidor Friedman to analyze this enhanced video of Zimmerman.
If he had a significant abrasion, I think we'd see that on this film. I don't see anything.
No, I don't see anything either. Okay, now ABC's Matt Gutman actually talked about the autopsy report on Trayvon as well. Let's watch that.
Sources tell ABC News and WFTV that Trayvon Martin's autopsy shows injuries to his knuckles, that his hands were bloodied, the skin broken. Evidence sources say which George Zimmerman's attorneys will use to describe what they call the ferocity of the attack against him, causing him to fight for his life the night he shot and killed Martin.
So a lot of people have seen this new evidence, and I've gotten the emails, etc., saying, aha, you see that? Oh, yes, we were right. George Zimmerman is not guilty. You judged him too quickly. But wait a minute. We never said that there wasn't a fight. We said that Zimmerman is the guy chasing after him. He's the one with the gun. You can't chase after a guy and then say, I can't believe he fought back, so I shot him in the chest. We never said that there wasn't a fight. The question is, who started the fight? And that's not just a question that you ask around the bar. It's a legal question. Dan Abrams, their legal analyst at ABC, also addresses that.
If George Zimmerman started the altercation and then he's losing the fight and fears for his life, he does not have the legal right at that point to use deadly force.
Of course! Otherwise, anybody could grab a gun, chase after anybody else, and if anyone dares to fight back against the aggressor, then they can get shot and they go, oh, self-defense. That's what's never made any sense here. And if you're not sure whether George Zimmerman was the aggressor, the one chasing after Trayvon Martin, well, of course, remember the famous 911 tape here.
This guy looks like he's up to no good or he's on drugs or something. They always get away.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Well, he did it anyway, and that obviously shows that he's the one that was pursuing Trayvon Martin. Now, there is a question about how the media has covered this, especially with this new evidence coming out. Some people are wringing their hands saying, you know, perhaps there was a rush to judgment. The Pew Research Center did a fascinating study where they looked at the different outlets and to see how much they covered it. And media coverage was 49% on MSNBC, 40% on CNN, and how will you look at that? Fox didn't cover it much at 15%. Really surprising. All right, now, I want to bring in a media critic here who's an expert on this. Eric Dagan is the media critic at the Tampa Bay Times. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. And first, I want to start with your take on this. So do you think the media has rushed to judgment?
I think we've seen different phases of media coverage. I think when it first became a national story, because George Zimmerman wasn't really speaking out and he didn't have any surrogates out there, The framework of the story was told pretty simply. A black teen, dead, unarmed, killed by a volunteer neighborhood watch guy with a gun, who may have been an aggressor, may have targeted him because of his race. Later, when George Zimmerman got representation, when people started speaking up for him, his side of the story started to come out more, and then we saw some of the coverage sort of lurch to his side of things. And I think the coverage has been different depending on the media outlet, the type of media outlet. I think cable television in particular and television in general has been very emotional. The reporting that you've done before this was particularly emotional. And I think has assumed some things about the case that we can't necessarily know for sure. And I think the newspapers have tried to focus more on facts. Because particularly the local newspapers, the Miami Herald and the Orlando Sentinel, that's their strength. If they can get in there and find out facts that maybe the national media outlets can't get to, that's their value. And then online, I think we've seen calls to action. We've seen a lot of people signing petitions, donating money to both Zimmerman and Martin's family, much more trying to get people involved with the ancillary issues that sort of jump off from this case.
Now, Eric, I am going to spare us the trial, and I'm going to say guilty as charged. I have been emotional, and I'll tell you why. And I don't view that as a negative. I view it as a positive. And the reason is, here's a guy who shot a kid in the chest. They don't even do a toxicology report on him. They don't even do a criminal background check on the guy who did the shooting. They do a criminal background check and a toxicology report on the poor kid who got shot. We see on the tape that he's already the one chasing after him. And then they don't arrest them. Eric, there's crimes all over the country. But when you don't get justice, and when you don't have the police doing their jobs, I think it's the job of people like me to get emotional and to say, wait a minute now, we got a big problem here. And I think that if we hadn't gotten emotional, they might have never arrested Zimmerman.
Well, I think it's important to ask tough questions about how the police handled the initial investigation here, why there was a delay in charging him, why the police department seemed to initially back George Zimmerman's account of what happened and seemed to shrug off some of the concerns of the parents until they got national media attention. I think that's all great things to ask about. But I think that we also have to try and be fair and even-handed about what's going on here. And like it or not, Zimmerman has said that he was returning to his car when Trayvon Martin attacked him from behind. Now, what does that mean? I mean, I think the problem that we have here, basically, is that there are two people who know what happened here. There are two people who know what happened from the moment that George Zimmerman got out of his car until the moment that Trayvon Martin was shot and killed. And one of them is dead, and another one of them has a huge incentive to twist the story to make himself look as good as possible. And the problem is that all these media outlets have been trying to figure out what's happening, have been trying to fill in those blanks, and sometimes they make supposition, sometimes they make emotional appeals, sometimes they assume things, and I think that ill serves the viewer. What we need now is as many hard facts as we can find.
Right.
And we need to try to be as fair as we can to figure out what happened.
Right. Now, look, of course we should be fair. And here, look, we are presenting the evidence, you know, the ones that seems to favor Zimmerman's defense, etc. You present both sides, obviously. But what I don't want to fall into the trap of doing is what I accuse the rest of the media is doing in politics, where they just say, Mitt Romney says he'll balance the budget and Obama says he won't. But wait a minute, tell me the damn facts, right? And the facts are that he put an $8.8 trillion deficit in the budget because of the tax cuts that he's pushing. In this case, the facts are not neutral. One guy had a gun. One guy chased after the other guy. The other guy's dead. The police did a terrible job. For example, with a car. Now, they say, oh, well, Zimmerman's defense is that he was going back to his car, and what could he do? The other kid, he shot the other kid, so you can't get his testimony at all. But they didn't even look at the car. New York Times story on this. They didn't even look at the car for evidence. Well, then I got to be mad about that. If I'm not mad about that, that shoddy police work is going to let a possible murderer off the hook.
Well, I certainly, again, as I said, there should be tough questions asked about how the police investigated this. But, for example, you played a clip where ABC had some expert look at this video of Zimmerman walking into the police department and said that he couldn't see any injuries on him. Well, you know, George Zimmerman was supposedly treated on the scene right after it happened, before he went to the police department. And who knows how high, you know, ABC says it's enhanced the video so that they can see more detail. Who knows what they've done to enhance that video? We saw CNN do one report where they claim to have enhanced the audio from Zimmerman's 911 call, and they say, you know, it seems like they heard him say a racial slur. Then they had another audio expert enhance the audio and said, well, okay, we don't necessarily think he used a slur. The fact of the matter is, journalists are not forensic scientists, and they should not be sifting through audio of 911 calls trying to enhance video or enhance audio to try to figure out what happened, because they're not experts. And that's all I'm saying.
Eric, I got to leave it here because we're out of time, but I have to say one last thing, which is that, look, we're not the judge and the jury, right? So if you say to me, hey, you don't get to decide whether he's innocent or guilty, absolutely. I totally agree with that. But it is our job to point out the facts so that we can get a trial. We weren't ever going to get a trial. We weren't even going to find out the facts if we hadn't put the spotlight on this case. And I'm not going to be neutral on the facts. I'm going to present the facts. I'm going to be objective about the facts. But at the same time, I can say the facts are not neutral. Trayvon didn't chase him down with a gun. Zimmerman chased down Trayvon with a gun and shot him in the chest. Those are the facts, and they're not neutral. Obviously, that's my take on it. Eric, I appreciate you coming in. It's a classic move by me to, you know, rant on at the end. But anyway, Eric Dagans, Tampa Bay Times, thank you so much. Appreciate it.